Hello and welcome to this Audionautic special with our new label mate, Frequency Control Center. How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah, very good. Thanks.
Cool. Frequency Control Center is releasing with us on the 22nd of April. And as per our platforming for this Such a Thing, we decided to sit down, go more in depth into the AB side release and talk a little bit more about the story behind the music.
Yeah, we as a label are interested and focus on not just the music, but the whole aesthetic, the artwork, the themes, the song titles, the narrative. So we really want to give a place for each artist to talk about their goals with the release, but also where they come from, how they approached making it, making the artwork and things like that. So we're really stoked to have Paul on today to talk a little bit about all these different things.
So yeah, it was lovely, Paul, when you came to, you hit us up and you were like, well, I've got this collection of Sonics and I would like you guys to kind of help us put it out. And we were like, yeah, cool, because it's a dope set. And at the point of recording, we're still in that kind of pre-production phase. This is in the masters are going through and we're doing all the I'm doing all the artwork and stuff. Michael's doing all the sound, that kind of thing. But you came to us with a distinct package, which is really interesting. Because you do quite a lot of this stuff day in and day out. It's kind of your jam. What was the inspiration behind the aesthetic for your particular artwork and for the vibe that you were giving out on these tracks?
I think a lot of it stems from, I've got a big background in design. I did a photography degree donkeys years ago after art school. So like every day I'm designing. So I've got a kind of, I've got an aesthetic eye. So I'm always on the lookout for interesting things. And I've recently got back into photography again. And I think one of the things when I'm searching around for music that I like, and I'm very much in the kind of Boards of Canada, that kind of vein of kind of, gritty, kind of wishy-washy electronica. I kind of like that feel to it, that nostalgia. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I really tend to look for when I'm kind of searching through, Apple Music, and do we dare mention Spotify these days? We can, I tend to look for a certain type of like track cover. So what I wanted to do was kind of use that kind of style that I know is in my head when I'm looking for music, and it still comes from that nostalgic kind of place. So what I've done is use a lot of my own photography and try and create kind of covers that have a certain feel to them, because I think it's one of the inherent problems with electronic music is that you don't have lyrics to kind of get across what the song is about. It's all left up to interpretation. So, having some artwork that does the job of the lyrics, I think is quite a nice way to push what the track is about.
So that's a great way of putting it. Now, for the people at home, I'm going to put the final artwork up on the screen so they can see. Can you tell us just a little bit about how that came to be, what it represents, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it just came about from experimenting, really, and I kind of experiment with the artwork in the same way that I experiment with the music, in that it's fairly organic. I don't ever have an ultimate idea that I'm reaching for. It kind of starts off with half an idea, and I'll just start playing around. And especially with the music, I mean, the music, that kind of starts with even just a sound or a beat or something. I never sit down and go, right, I'm gonna write a track about the sun or the moon or whatever. And the same with the artwork. I started off with half an idea and then just gathered a load of old photos together and just started playing around with them.
That's cool. So it's serendipity, isn't it? Happy accidents, as Bob Ross would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like I still feel like, because I've been involved with music, ever since I was kind of a teenager, basically, but in lots of different guises over the years. But I've only recently got back into making electronic music again, and so I still feel like I'm finding my way through, and everything feels like a happy accident.
Let's shift a little bit to the music. So you say sometimes it starts with a sound or something like that. Are you playing something on your keyboard and you just make like a loop or something, or how do you start a song and then where do you go from it? Like, how do you approach elaborating on an idea?
I tend to play around with sound, kind of in the same way as I play around with the imagery. I start with a bunch of things. Could be a sample. Mm-hmm. Could be a sound from a sound library. But I start off with something that just tweaks my ear a little bit and makes me go, ooh, that sounds nice. It's got a nice vibe to it. I think I could probably do something with that. And then I start pulling it apart and putting it back together again, and sampling and resampling and sticking it into different VSTs and stuff in Reason, and just hacking about with it, layering it up, sticking effects on till I get to a point where I'm really kind of really loving it. Mm-hmm. and then from there I start to play around with melodies, and then what I tend to do is just layer and layer and layer and layer, on a very tight loop, to the point where there's no more room, to put anything extra on there. And then I tend to pull it apart. And because I'm quite visual, being a designer, I tend to kind of see music as patterns. So when I'm kind of messing around in the editor in Reason, I'm pulling it apart and almost making patterns in what I see and what I'm hearing at the same time. And it's definitely once I pull everything apart, then it kind of, that the space comes back into it, and then you start arranging things and adding more stuff in certain points, and it kind of evolves like that. There's never a verse or a chorus or there's just a bit that goes into a bit that goes into a bit, and if it feels right and it sounds right, then it stays.
Well, that's interesting how you put it, because I use Reason as well when I compose, and it's a very visual. That's one thing I like about it. It's a very visual system. Like, you have all these colors you can do, and you see all the MIDI in each little track and stuff. And so if I'm gathering right, you keep like an 8-bar or 12-bar loop, something like that, and you just keep adding new instruments, right? Like, as you're playing the loop and you're just adding more instruments, more parts and things like that. And then you then from that put things like, okay, I want to maybe you just loop everything like 80 times and then delete parts, or you just like, right. Yeah. Where you want it to be, right? You have the final like crescendo of all these parts. And so you're just kind of getting into that point by taking things out, bringing things back in.
Yeah, definitely. And I think at Boards of Canada, I remember them saying in an interview or something years ago that it's that their music is more about the stuff they take out than what they leave. Mm-hmm. And it definitely feels that that's a nice way to go, because a lot of the time I'll kind of, once I've separated it out, mm-hmm. and I've got space, I'll try and add other things in, and so you get to a point where you're trying to pump stuff into a track and it's just not working. And actually you need to go the other way and take stuff out and trim it back and actually you need that space, that room it's like in design, you talk about negative space. And it's the same in music. You need that negative space in between all the parts for the parts to be visible.
That's a very good way of putting it. So in a way of building the full composition and working backwards, Eon Lake does a very similar thing. You kind of get that kind of like triangle effect with your DAW and the way it looks in that sense. So the release itself, we've got it coming out on the 22nd of April across the way. We have 2 tracks involved. We have Pattern Machine and we have Ventral Tegmental. Hard G. Very hard G.
It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Yeah, it is.
Could you, what is there any particular kind of meaning or kind of symbolism between these kind of titles, so to speak?
I'd love to say yes. I'd love to say that there's a higher thing going on here with the names of tracks and how they link together. But there isn't. I have a real problem with naming stuff. Yeah. I mean, I think, it's tricky with electronic music, especially when it's so organic. I'm not really thinking about themes or, names or any of that when I'm making the music. So you end up with a finished track, and normally it's just got a date on it. On the file name, March number 1, that's it. And at some point, you've got to come up with a name that fits, and actually, it's just stuff I read and things that I see, and I think, I just think that's great. That'd be a great title for a book. So Ventral Tegmental, I'm reading a book called, not going to be able to remember the name of it now. It's called Atomic something.
Habits?
Atomic Habits,
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
And it's great. It's a great book. But it was just in there. They're talking about areas of the brain, to do with how habits form. And that was there. And it was like, yeah, that kind of fits. Pattern Machine is a little bit different because Pattern Machine comes from the sample that's used in that track, which is from a really, really, really old scientific film from the 1950s or something. So that, that was easy. The samples there, it's kind of what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. So yeah, easy name for a change.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's always easy to name when you've got these vocal samples. I use a lot of vocal samples. It's easier to create a theme because they are lyrics in their own right.
Yeah, that's it. It's on the plate.
Exactly. It's sitting there. It's sitting there for you.
So bringing it back to the artwork, I'm curious. Once you've got the name, you've got the song. Do you try to make the artwork in relation to the name, or do you usually have the artwork first?
Yeah, I think that the artwork the artwork definitely comes before the name, because it's a bit like, it's like, you know, the music has a feel and the artwork will have a feel that kind of matches the music. Mm-hmm. And then the name, you know, to me, the name is almost incidental. I mean, I'd love to put out music without any name at all, you know, so that people don't have a preconception. But I think it's very difficult to do that unless you just give it a number or a a symbol or something like that.
Yeah, and the streaming sites hate it. If you try to upload through DistroKid, they're like, nope, you can't do this. It's too, quote, generic.
Yeah. You know, but on the other hand, it is kind of fun trying to come up with names for tracks, I suppose.
It's a struggle sometimes, though, right? Especially, like, as you're saying, if it's a instrumental or something, it's like, because you want to walk a fine line of like giving the listener an idea, but you also don't want, like you said, them to have this preconception, because you want them to figure out what it means to them, right? You know?
Yeah. I mean, I quite like the way people like Tangerine Dream, looking up there because there's an album up there. Tangerine Dream used to do it in the 70s where they'd have the name of the album, and then every track would be the name of the album part 1, name of the album part 2, part 3, part 4.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
You know?
Nice and easy. Nice and easy. Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's always the way forward. It's a very shy away from what we can do. So you've got these two on the tracks, which is again 22nd of April. Do you have anything else in the pipeline? Are you working on anything? What is it that you're kind of focusing on right now?
I've got a handful of other tracks that are kind of sister tracks to these two. Hopefully, you know, if we can group them all together into an EP, I think that would be quite a nice thing to put out. And then after that, I'm kind of fancying a bit of a change. I've always kind of had a head in ambient stuff, like proper ambient stuff. So I'd quite like to delve into that a little bit more, you know, beatless kind of drone ambient stuff. I know there's a lot of it around, and you know, everybody seems to have a go at it these days, but I think just as a cathartic process for myself, I'll give it a go.
Your voice, use your own voice.
Yeah. You know, but if it sounds good and you know, people are into it and it's worth a release, then yeah, give that a go. Again, you know, it's fairly organic. It's see where the road takes me, I think.
I like it. It's cool.
That's a good way to go.
Yeah, completely. I mean, we're to borrow Sunwarper's phrase, we're stoked to have you here with us.
Brilliant. Thank you.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's been awesome so far. So I'm really looking forward to it. It'd be great to see what happens with the release in April, and then we'll just, you know, keep on creating.
It's the way forward.
Yeah,
it's the way forward.
As Josh says, and as he just said, that is the way forward for all of us. I think just keep creating.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Keep going.
Exactly. Thank you ever so much for sitting down with us, Paul. And for those listening at home, 22nd of April, it's gonna be great. I'm gonna get it out and add another one. Well, I have more people in the community and people in the label mates, as they say.
If you want to check out these two tracks, you can head to the link in the description to pre-order.
Thank you ever so much, and guys, we'll see you next time for the next one.
Thanks for watching.